Now, the first question I have, Senator, is that I'm just looking at this excess deaths data from Australia here. And we see that the deaths in Australia started going up in May 2021, got higher in June, July, August, September, October, until in October there were 7,192 deaths. Now, this is in 2021. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the Australia vaccine programme began in the February 2021. And COVID didn't really kick off in Australia until 2022. Two questions here, really. The first is, I expect this excess deaths is front page news on all the newspapers and everyone's clamouring to work out why it is. And the second is, what do we think is causing this? So first of all, is this making the news? Are the mainstream media all over this story?
No, they're not. And they weren't over the story in 2021. And the reason why I think it's worth looking at 2021 rather than 2022 is because COVID was in the community in 2022, and it's been very easy to conflate the excess deaths with COVID. Now, I do think that some of the excess deaths were due to COVID. However, I don't think that the majority of the excess deaths were due to COVID. And the reason why I say that is when I look at the 2021 data, the excess deaths did start to climb in May. Now, the vaccine program only really started to kick off in late March. So given that the ABS has a bit of a time delay in reporting, and for many people, they don't necessarily die in the first day after a vaccine injury. It may take a number of days or weeks. I think there's a very strong temporal association between the rollout of the COVID vaccine and the increase in deaths in Australia. And what's interesting is that by the end of 2021, we had about an extra 9,000 deaths. So deaths jumped from 162,000 to 171,000. Now, it's worth noting that in 2020, deaths were 2019 deaths were 164,000. So the lockdowns reduced the death rate by about 2,000 in 2020. And then it jumped about 9,000 in 2021. So we can't put the excess deaths down to the lockdowns and delayed doctor reactions and things like that. Maybe a part of the climb in excess deaths, but not all of it. And what's interesting is in that increase of 9,000, that happened from April, May onwards, that it started to spike, and it wasn't in the first 4 months. So if that was extrapolated for the whole year, that would work out at about 12,000 extra deaths, or almost a jump of 10% in that year, despite the fact there was next to no COVID in the community.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we remember that there were small outbreaks in Victoria, but there was lockdowns and they were closed down. So there was essentially no COVID in 2021 in Australia.
That's right.
I've got the figure, Senator, in front of me here. It's 10,392 excess deaths in Australia in 2021. And bear in mind, this is a population of what, 26.5 million?
Yeah, about 25.5 million in 2021.
Yeah. Why is it that, I mean, imagine 10,000 people have been killed in a terrorist attack. This would be like massive news around the world. Why isn't this being reported in Australia?
Well, I mean, that's the $64 million question, John, and I can only speculate as to the answer why, but I suspect it doesn't suit the government or the media or the health authorities in the private sector, big pharma and things like that, to actually investigate further, because I can't see that there's any other reason other than the rollout of the COVID vaccines. Now, I'm not saying it's responsible for every excess death. I do think that the lockdowns may have had some response to it. In 2021, there were about 1,300 deaths from COVID. In 2020, there were about 980. So COVID deaths did increase by about 300, but yet again, a long way short of the extra 10,000 in excess deaths. And what's also very interesting about these numbers is that the largest increase in the death rate was in Western Australia and Queensland, the two states where there were no lockdowns, and there was no COVID, or very few cases of COVID. And if they were there, they were in people in quarantine. So yet again, the data would indicate that it was a result of the vaccine rollout rather than COVID itself.